And I have on here, they have to have a laser focus on results. And then down at the bottom, I have my four favorite words is revenue, profit, brand, and share. Those are the things that a marketer needs to focus on. And unfortunately, there's a trade-off between the two. I kind of consider brand as being brand value or brand equity. That's kind of a long-term thing. And share is can be another metric similar to profit and revenue. Profit and revenue are certainly short-term things. And if we have a focus on helping the company make the numbers this month, we also need to trade off in terms of, well, do I grow the brand this year or this month so that we can make the numbers next month or next quarter? And so the marketer, if they're doing their job right, for them to be a key component of corporate success, for them to be in line for what drives the company, they have to be able to make the numbers, and they have to have their eye on results. And those results are in those four areas: revenue, profit, brand, and share. And so, unfortunately, if analytics and ROI and accountability aren't a big piece of the marketing culture, then you're going to have decisions being made basically by what I call the hippo. And I'm assuming you know what a hippopotamus is. It's one of those big fat animals you see in the zoo, and they live in Africa and they're in the water. So a hippopotamus. Now the hippo, though, stands for something that's very, very important here. And the name actually comes from Avanish Kaushik. He's one of the senior VPs for Google Analytics. And I happened to be at a presentation to him, and he brought out this term. The hippo is the highest paid person's opinion. So if you're in marketing and you're letting your marketing be driven by the highest paid person's opinion, the hippo, then you're not using your data and you're not using your insights and your analytics to really be able to make the right decisions. And there was a kind of an interesting story with Coca-Cola. Sergio Zeman, he was the CMO for a while, and he had come up with a couple of different creative concepts for some new ads. And he showed them to the CEO, and the CEO showed them to his wife, and the CEO comes back the next day, and the CEO says to Sergio, and says, my wife really likes this one over here, and really like this creative concept, and Sergio had already picked this one over here because this was the better performing one. And he said, well, that may be right, but the one that's going to perform is this one. It's not your wife's opinion. It's not your opinion. And which would you prefer? Would you prefer us to get revenue, profit, brand, and share, or would you rather have us follow your wife's opinion, the highest paid person's opinion, the hippo? And so that's a big deal. I think that's a very big deal. The other thing is, and I don't know how many of you are agencies. Maybe raise your hand. How many of you all work with an agency, or are you corporate marketers? So raise your hand if you're an agency. Okay, maybe about a third, it looks like. This is really cool. I didn't think I'd be able to ask questions. So, but anyway, and I don't know if that model is happening for you in Holland, but certainly here in the U.S., agencies are now being asked and almost forced to be paid based on success. It's no longer based on your creative and delivering on some project. It's now being based on success. How much revenue and profit did I bring? And if that's the case, then we need to really, we as the agency and we as the CMO really need to have a laser focus on success. So from a, just a second. So from a next slide, the making better strategic and tactical decisions in the future. That's what it's all about. That's what we're trying to do. In marketing, as much as we need to prove the past, we need to show ROI and be accountable to the past and the rest of the company. In reality, what we're really trying to do is make better strategic and tactical decisions for the future. And that's important. And when I think about what that means for us, and we look at how the process of strategy and tactics and and metrics and ROI all kind of come together. We first put our strategy together. The strategy then defines what our goals might be and what we're trying to achieve. From that strategy, we're going to have tactics. Those tactics are going to be, well, we're going to try and do some TV, and we're going to do some internet, we're going to do some social media and what have you. From those tactics, we're going to define what our metrics are going to be. How do we measure the success of our radio and our TV and our social media? From those metrics, we want to calculate ROI, because now what we want to do is we want to see, well, was my investment in TV better or worse than an investment in the internet or an investment in social media? So now, once I have that, now I can feed that back into my strategy, and I can kind of go through this whole cycle of moving from strategy, tactics, to metrics, and to ROI. And that leads us, hopefully, to a measure of continuous improvement. If we go to the next slide, in terms of willingness to employ metrics, I've been doing consulting now, and I don't know how many of you talk about metrics and talk with your clients about that, but it always surprises me the willingness of certain marketers to even think about employing metrics in their business. And I have two charts on there. The one on the left says the percentage of marketing budget. So how much as a percentage of the marketing budget do you spend on measuring marketing effectiveness? So how many of you there spend 1% or less? Raise your hand if it's 1% or less. How many are, okay, 1, fantastic, good. How many of you spend 2% to 5%? 2% to 5% of your budget on measuring marketing effectiveness. Is anybody over 5%? So what that tells me, and this is a typical answer, by the way, is that most of you are spending nothing. How many of you are spending nothing on measuring marketing success? I must admit, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. How many of you are, okay, so anyway, so that's what this chart kind of says. And one of the interesting thing here, since I didn't get any feedback on that question, I'm going to assume that you all don't spend very much. But one of the things that's kind of interesting here is that if we look at the 50% of the people spending less than 1%, that's the big red bar on the that's standing out there. It basically says most people aren't spending very much. Now let's compare that to 3 brands that I think you'll recognize. One of them is Miller Brewing, and I apologize, they're U.S., but Sara Lee Foods, and then the last one is Procter & Gamble. I think we all know Procter & Gamble. Those 3 companies spend anywhere from 6% of their marketing budget to 13% of their marketing budget on metrics. 6% to 13%. So they're way off to the right on that chart that you're looking at. And it's kind of it has two implications here, I think. If you think about a CFO, can you imagine being the CEO and going to the CFO and asking him and saying, how much money do we have in the bank today? Well, I don't know because I don't measure it. I think we might have $1 million in the bank, or I don't know, maybe we have $2 million. His job, he clearly isn't going to keep his job if he doesn't measure that. So why is it that the CFO can measure cash down to the last penny or pfennig or euro, as opposed to the marketer not even being able to spend anything? And the CFO has got tons of systems in place. They have cash management systems, they have treasury, they have check clearing, they have a whole bunch of other systems in place that really talk about and help them to know exactly how much money they have in the bank. Can you imagine building a building and going off and getting your budget set, and then you go, well, I don't know how big this building is going to be. It's going to have maybe 25 rooms, but I don't know, maybe we'll put in 30. If we're not measuring as marketers, this is, I think, the key thing here. If we're not willing to invest in metrics, we will never, ever be more than an expense. We will never, ever be more than expense. So if the CFO can spend money on systems and other activities to measure cash, why is it that we're not, as marketers, spending money on measuring the success of our marketing? Now, ROI, of course, is one of the key components here. And for us to really be successful, and now looking at the chart on the right, and satisfy and communicate properly with the rest of the company, we need to talk in the language that they're interested in. They don't care about colors and jingles and music and creative. What they're interested in is ROI. And in this particular survey, and this one's a little more recent, the numbers haven't changed much, but 69% of the CEOs are less than satisfied with their marketing department. Kind of says something about how bad we are at communicating and measuring and being willing to use metrics in our approach. Okay, so how many of you have heard of the term last touch attribution? Basically, in this example, I do a direct mail piece. It's a coupon. It could be something else, but I'm going to assume it's a coupon for the moment. It's kind of conceptual anyway. I drop 3 sets of coupons, or I do 3 direct mail pieces, or I do 3 banner ads, or whatever it is, and I get a certain click-through rate or a response rate. And the first 3 give me 1.2% each, and then the last 2 give me 0.7%. And on average, I got a 1.0%, and I go, man, that's pretty good, right? Well, that response rate that I'm talking about there is called last touch attribution. And that's how most marketers, and by the way, that's how the rest of the company wants to measure marketing. Unfortunately, if you go to the next slide, TV, it could have been that there was an integrated marketing campaign. We all use integrated marketing campaigns. We're not just looking at one particular activity here. We're looking at a mix of activities, and we need to be able to measure across the entire mix. And so what we need is a method, a surefire method, to be able to measure the attribution of our marketing, whether it's a coupon drop, a direct mail piece, and we're running TV, and we're running radio, and we're doing social media all at the same time. And we need something that talks about optimizing across the entire mix. And I love this picture here in terms of the spices that are being offered on this table, and looking at those as different marketing activities that take place. And whether I want to invest in the red one and a little bit in the yellow, and traditional media or social media. Now, it's also, though, very critical for us to not only look at our own media, but we also have to look at pricing, and how pricing might affect our sales, how a product launch, how the product feature set or the brand attributes of a particular product are going to impact the sales that we might have. Certainly there's external factors, and we saw that with the Denny's example in terms of how their advertising was able to grow our response. And with the goal that what we want to do is we want to optimize across the mix, of course. So we want to make sure that we understand what's working for us and what's not working for us. And then lastly, we want to potentially improve with the good things, diagnose the bad things, and then finally figure out how we can improve across the entire mix. So the next is an example. The next slide is an example of a product launch that we helped to improve. And I think this is probably one of the hardest marketing activities there are to optimize and use and build ROI. If you look at the chart on the left, that was the actual launch. And we see that the brand made about 2% share, maybe a little bit over that. And we went back, and the 2% share in a fast-moving consumer goods company is not really very good. If you only achieve 2%, the retailers are probably not interested in you, and they may actually want to take you off the shelves, and then you go into a death spiral, and basically then your launch totally fails. In order to really be successful, you need to get into the 4, 5, 6% share range in order to be successful. And what we did was we used a tool that optimizes ROI and helps you to launch a product better, to help them to get to about 4% share. 2% more in an optimized launch, looking at the past, and had they done what we had optimized, they would have been able to achieve 4%. In the end, we were able to help them to get to 4% to 6% overall share, a tripling of what their original success was, using just basic ROI, using an analysis based on marketing mix, and and taking those things to heart and really making a pretty big difference.